Today I want to talk to you about grow lights. And how do you know which one is better for you? The red lights, the blue lights, the full spectrum, or a mix? Alright, so these red lights, the red and the blue both, you can flip them from red to blue to a mix, but there's no white in them. These are also only one layer, one row. That's all that's there. And if you look up at these, it's a little bit harder to tell because of how bright the LED is in them. But only about 1 in every 3 of those is actually burning. Alright, so how do you know which light spectrum is the best? Outside, it's a full spectrum light. You don't have just red or just blue. So that's one of the reasons that I switched over to the white light as far as my grow light system. I've still got my older lights that I started with that are red-blue, but I want to show you, or at least explain to you, a couple different reasons why some people prefer red, some people prefer blue, and some people prefer to kind of stick with that middle ground. Red light and blue lights are considered more economical when you're looking at how much light is absorbed by the plant itself versus how much it's costing you to run that light. At the same time, it's important to think about what your arrangement for your grow lights are so that you're getting the more intense light that you need. The type of light of red versus blue isn't as important. The reason that people go with the red light and the blue light is because when you're looking at what plants can absorb from the light spectrum, the visible light measured in nanometers is usually 400 to 700 nanometers. That is considered to be photosynthetically active radiation, or basically how much that the plant can absorb of that. If you want to look at this in more simple terms, red light promotes flowering or fruit production. So when people are going, oh, I'm wanting my plants to grow, I need blue lights because blue light's going to promote the growth of the plant itself, like the leaves, the stem. They go more towards the blue light. But then they say, well, I need it to do more than just that, so I need the red light to make it flower. And you put both together, and your plant will grow. It's not going to stop your plant from growing. It just may not give it as much as it needs. And when it's getting just the red light or the blue light or the combination together, which it really needs to be the combination together, if you're just giving it one or the other, you're going to have a weak plant on the other side because it's not getting all of the nutrients. We think about why we garden. We look at the nutrients for our bodies, and we look at what we're doing to the soil and having the healthiest food available. So if you take just red and you leave out the blue, it's like missing half of your daily vitamins and minerals that you get from your plants, or vice versa. So you want to still get that full combination. When you buy commercially available grow lights for like residential use for you to use in your home, and you're looking at LEDs, because that's all I'm talking about today is LED, is you're going to find a lot of the red light, blue light combinations, and those are fine. But like I show you in this video, you only have that one small row of lights. So you've only got a light source coming from about this much space. And that light dissipates as it goes down, the intensity of it. Well, your plant is going to grow towards the light source. So if this is your light source and it's dissipating down, so here's the direct source, and your plant is over here growing, it's going to grow in towards that light. And that's where a lot of gardeners start to run into problems with weaker plants, because they're using their energy to grow towards the light source and the stems aren't being strong. The first year I did tomato plants, I had to stake them up when they were only this tall because they were growing towards the light source and it was too far away. And so they just kept curving in. And even though I rotate them every day, rotate them in the morning, rotate them at night, whatever it took, they just were weak. They'd flop around. They were not strong. All right, with white lights, you're looking at full spectrum. So the human eye can't visibly discern just the wavelength of the red or just the wavelength of the blue unless it's reflecting back off of something. If you remember back in like elementary school when we had the light lesson and how it all worked, go back to that. Outdoors, you've got full spectrum light. That's what your plant's used to. That's what I went with mine. Now, critics of full spectrum lights are going to claim that you're wasting energy on wavelengths that the plant doesn't necessarily need. I don't have all the scientific evidence to back this up, but from my experience over starting plants over several years, the plants that I put under white lights, the full spectrum lights, grew better and faster, as you saw this year. That's why I have tomato plants ready to go in the ground at the beginning of March, when I really needed them to be coming off in April. Is I changed up my light from red blue to white light. So the type of light you have matters, and it's going to affect how quickly and how well your plants grow. Now, my old grow lights that are red blue didn't give me these extra numbers that were thrown out when I started looking at upgrading my light system. Once I started looking at full spectrum lights and hanging lights versus lights that are already fixed on like that gooseneck and that or clamp or something, that's when I started finding out about T8 versus T5 versus T12, and it was really confusing. I had to really sit down and do my research. But basically, that T8 or T5 or T12 is telling you the bulb size. Okay, the difference between the T5 and the T8 bulbs has to do with their energy use. So some are going to say that T5 is going to generate slightly more heat than a T8, and that others will say that the T5s aren't going to be as long lasting, whereas the T8s, while they may produce less heat per bulb, they're going to last you longer. Ultimately, this comes back to the type of bulb you're using and its energy efficiency. And knowing this and how you're wanting to do your setup, this is something you're going to need to research on your own and what's going to work best for you. That's not something that is going to be as particular to helping plant growth. All right, so the reason that I switched from the gooseneck lamps that I had to start with, because I had 3 of those that I started out my growing with, because they only have that one little bar and how the light dissipates, even though I tried reflectors and everything around it to try to keep the light focusing down on the plant, I was still struggling with leggy plants. I was having to really hit the airflow to keep them strong, but I was still just having a lot of legginess from them searching for the light. So that's one of the reasons that I personally switched to hanging lights, because I wanted to be able to drop that light low down on top of my seedlings. So when my seedlings are only like this tall, I drop that light down just a few inches above them, and I keep them there until they grow, and then I just slowly increase it as they grow. The reason for that is keeping the intensity of the light and the growth source down on it helps keep more compact plants, keeps them from getting so tall and weak and leggy. Now, there are other things that you can do to affect how your seedlings go, not just the grow lights, but grow lights are very important, or whatever your light source is. Some people have enough natural light where they live that they can set their plants in a window, and maybe they're home during the day and they can rotate them. Their plants are fine. Maybe you have a greenhouse that is able to use the outdoor energy. So don't get hung up just on the grow light part. But I do also want to explain how you get healthy seedlings all around. So for healthy seedlings, you need light, which we just talked about, you need air, and you need water. And these 3 things are going to give you the best seedlings that you can grow. We just talked about the light, so let's go on to the air. Seedlings need airflow. Plants need airflow. Everything needs air. They convert carbon dioxide into oxygen. So plants, they absorb the leaves, the stems, the photosynthesis process. They take in that carbon dioxide, they break it down into sugars along with the light source, and that's their food. But they also need nutrients from the soil, don't get me wrong, but just talking about the air around them. If they're sitting in stale, stagnant air, it's not going to help them grow. They need moving air. Think about how your body develops muscles. You have to work against resistance. You can't just say, oh, I'm going to have really big muscles and then sit on the couch all day. It's not going to work. You go and you use weights, you do push-ups, you do things that we call closed chained, open chained, depending on how you're making the muscle work to really develop your muscles. The plants are the same thing. Think about their stems and their leaves and their base of support being their muscle system. And so in order for them to develop the best muscular system that you can have, you really need them to have that airflow blowing over them. I'm not talking like a super hard wind. I'm not talking like go in and just like hit the plant and go, oh, it's good. We're making it strong, because that's not how it's going to work. That'd be the equivalent of you going to the gym on day one and saying, oh, I'm going to bench press 500 pounds, and then coming back with like torn tendons and ligaments, or who knows what else you've damaged in that process. So what you really need to start out with, as soon as my seedlings come up, what I do is I just take my hand and I gently rub them across. Sometimes I say I'm petting my plants. People think I'm weird, whatever. But I'm just sitting there rubbing across my hands across them. Not hard, just lightly, just enough to kind of make the stem bend just a little. I also turn on a fan. So I start with like a ceiling fan. As long as I can see the leaves move just a little bit with my ceiling fan, I'll let it go. As they get bigger, I make sure that they're spaced out enough that their stems aren't supported by the canopy of other plants, so that the airflow will keep moving through the stems, keeping them stronger. I've got tomato plants and they're this tall that I have not had to stake yet, okay? These plants are almost a foot tall outside of the pot, and I don't have to stake them because I have worked on their muscular system to make their stems strong, and a lot of that comes from the airflow. You can also take just like a little portable fan, set it down around it just where it's getting airflow moving on and around it enough that you see the leaves moving. And this is something that you're going to do the entire time that they're growing. The third thing that's going to help you produce really good plants is going to be how you water them. So when I first had seedlings, the very first time that I grew from seed indoors, I was scared of overwatering them, of touching them. I don't know, I had some fear that like oils from my hands would damage the leaves and I would kill my seedlings. And I was trying so hard to have good seedlings that I was babying my plants. I mean, like way too far babying my plants. I wouldn't touch them. I took a spray bottle and I sprayed the soil, which wasn't getting the water down deep enough, because when they're in a tray like this thick and my seed's sitting down here and the roots are down here, or I'm wanting my roots to go down and I'm only watering the surface level of it, I wasn't able to develop the roots that I needed. I had plants this tall after 12 weeks that I was ready to put in the ground, and their roots were this long. They didn't have that base of support, their root system intact enough to really be able to survive in the ground. They were stunted throughout that whole growing season. And I'll be honest, I was really upset. I went to people asking for help. How do I grow better tomato plants? And I'll be honest, I went to a commercial grower because they were going out of business. I didn't feel so bad asking them for their secrets, considering they had been our supplier forever and they were going out of business. It's like, what am I going to do? I got to grow my own seeds now. And he said, well, if you got them to sprout, you know, he's like, it sounds like you did everything right. I don't know what happened. I figured it out. It took me a while, but I finally figured out what I was doing wrong. And that's what I want to save you from making that same mistake. I was worried about babying the plants too much, so I didn't give them the airflow that I needed to make them strong. But I also watered them from the top and not enough. If I want the roots to go down searching for water, I need to put the water where the roots are going to find it. So when they're in the smaller trays, or even when I put them in the smaller cups, you know, my like little bit cups you saw them in the previous video when I was transplanting, what I have to do is I water them from the bottom. So I'll take like an old pan, fill it up, you know, so far with water, set the plants down in it, and then leave them, and it's going to vary. I've had some that I can put in the water and in like 5 minutes they've sucked up the water, they're done, I can put them inside. And then I have other plants that may need like 20 minutes to absorb the water. What I have found is that if you let the soil dry out all the way, it takes longer and it's harder for them to reabsorb the water. It's like the air gets into those pockets in the soil, and then the water has to go in and displace the air, and there's just not enough room and it takes longer. That's why when you're starting seeds, you start with the soil damp, and then you keep it watered. Not enough to grow a fungus or an algae or a mold or anything like that, so you don't want to overwater, but you want to keep, at least at the bottom, keep it damp so it'll help sucking up that water. And so I water from the bottom, and ever since I started doing that, I have the best roots around. Like of all my, like all the times that I've tried these plants, I have fantastic roots. Now I've put them in 1 gallon pots right now because I'm trying to get them to last until I can put them in the ground. And when I did that, I stopped watering as much from the bottom. And that's because the roots that I already had developed, I put down. But I want that stem that I buried to develop roots. Well, in order to do that, I need it to also get water. So I've started watering them from the top like they're going to get in the garden. So I've kind of switched it around. But you got to know, if you're wanting the roots to grow down, you have to provide the source, the food source for the plant's roots at the bottom. It needs its water. If you put it up at the top, the roots that start down like that big taproot are going to turn and come back up, and you're not going to get that base of support that you need. And I keep talking base of support because that's one of my OT terms. When you think about doing something, let me show you. Right, when you're thinking about base of support, think about how you're standing. If you know somebody's fixing to come up and hit you, you stand with your feet apart, your knees bent, you're ready to take that impact. If you are just standing around because you're not doing anything, a lot of times you'll stand with your feet together. If you stand with your feet together and you're not ready and I come up and push you, you're going to fall over, or you're going to have to take steps to keep your balance. That's that base of support I'm talking about for your plants. They need that root system to be able to anchor them in the ground so that when they are outside and the wind's hitting them and they're really working that core trunk control, their muscular system, they'll be able and ready and prepared to take that impact, and they'll survive better in the garden. I'm really hoping that these tips on how to start plants are going to help you as you are starting yours. It's not too late to change up how you're watering your airflow on your seedlings that you've already started. It's not too late to save your plants. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you do, leave me some comments below. I'll answer any questions that I can.
Get your checklist for starting your seeds so that you'll have the best seeds that you can. Thanks for watching.